Hey, it's Mike in the wild here, and today we're talking about gardening and the science of its health benefits. I know it sounds like a simple topic, but there's a bunch of stuff here that will surprise you. And this is a garden that we built a couple years ago. I have a whole video on that if you want to check it out. Not enough people watched it though. But the garden has been great, and I will do a mini tour at the end, but let's get back inside to go over the science. And yeah, we're back in my house, and I am wearing this shirt, which I have been told to never wear again because it's too loud. But hey, it's a garden video, and it's kind of floral. We're gonna look at a ton of research on this. We have new studies from 2024. We have some old studies. There are some benefits that you would never even consider. The scientists have been busy here, even in terms of mortality. So garden or die? Garden like your life depends on it? Yeah, it's not some flashy new drug or diet, but I feel like that's why gardening is something we should be focusing on, you know, getting back to our roots, literally. Anyway, let's cover some real basic stuff here. First of all, we are talking about what is officially horticultural therapy. So making it a little bit fancier. And I think there's a case to be made that humans have a long history of cultivating plant-based foods, and there's likely some evolutionary connection there to why we would get some type of benefit from it. It's sort of like how we love sparkly things, and that's thought to be, you know, something that's meant to draw us toward water because we literally need water to survive. So perhaps there are some signals that we get when we work with plants that help us, help our body be healthier, help us calm down, etc. And, you know, well, there are some mechanisms to be explored. We're just gonna straight up look at what are the health benefits. Now, we're talking about actual improvements in things like mental health, looking at cortisol levels, looking at the gut biome and skin biome as well. And last point, in terms of historical gardening, the Okinawans and other blue zones are known for these people gardening into old age, having gardening be a large part of their culture. And so right there, we know there's likely some benefit. Is it association? Is it causation? We'll explore it. And just real quick, before we get to the research, I should mention that I was motivated to make this video because of my own personal experience when I had COVID a couple years back. I wasn't having a severe case, but my one main symptoms was weird body anxiety that was like really intense that I had never experienced before. And one of the things that really helped was going back in my garden and just chilling out. You know, I went from like straight up tweaking to, you know, maybe 50% less tweaking out and recovered, which is great. And I will say it's at the point with gardening where various scientists are calling for like a regular dose of gardening, as this paper mentions. However, I will say there is a very sketchy conflict of interest here. Yes, that author is involved with the National Garden Scheme. Like, be less obvious in your scheme to take over the world one garden bed at a time. Here's a tomato. The first one's free. He'll be back. All right, fine, I'll get to the science already. Well, one study that I think is just so important here is this 2017 one from Japan. It's funded by the Japan Society of Promotion of Science. It's a meta-analysis, and that sounds very legit. But it shows a lush, larger picture of all of these benefits that you can get, and it shows it in a nice forest plot, which is a very appropriate name. And just a quick reminder, a forest plot is where you have that middle line, and then various studies have their own little bar and their own little confidence interval. And if that bar doesn't hit that center line of one, then the scientists are pretty confident that the results weren't from chance. And then they sort of add that all together at the bottom into a diamond shape. And the edges of those diamond become that confidence interval. And we can see a pretty tight diamond down here showing that. We have roughly a 30 to 40% overall benefit from various health things combined from gardening. And some of the studies that hit statistical significance on their own that are worth mentioning include topics like improved sociability, self-esteem, sense of community, improved depression and confusion, anger, lower stress, lower tension, and more vigor, etc. And then there are several other studies that didn't hit statistical significance. However, it is still important, and this is the benefit of a meta-analysis, to just put more data together, and that makes it more statistically powerful. And a singular worthwhile study looking at from this meta-analysis, not just because it's the largest at 400, but also because it looked at the topic of life satisfaction, found that gardening led to greater life satisfaction. I mean, what more do you want? And to elaborate on just general goodness, we have this meta-analysis from 2024 on well-being. And you can see here that about 8 out of 9 studies showed a positive result in terms of well-being. The other one was just neutral. And so clumping all of that together, finding that meta-analysis result, they determined that there was a 55% improvement in general well-being markers across these studies, which is definitely notable. Like, who doesn't want their life to be 50% better? The answer, plant some tomatoes or whatever. Anyway, we can move on to the gut microbiome, which is super interesting to me always. The first study of interest looked at families that garden or have a garden versus those that do not, and it found that the gardening families actually had an increased diversity in their microbiome. Also of interest in terms of their gut microbiome, they could see shifts over the season, which is really interesting. And also that some of that bacteria was found particularly from the soil and soil samples. However, they say we don't know for sure that this would actually lead to direct health benefits. We do have another study though out of Finland. Well, it's not that large. It did look at some potential health benefits. And this was a randomized trial. So they had a placebo, and that was just some pretty microbially sterile peat. And then they also had some microbially rich garden soil. And the results were that their skin microbiome increased in its diversity. But the interesting finding I wanted to share was that they had an increased level of anti-inflammatory interleukin 10. So the head researcher said, this is the first time we can demonstrate that meaningful and natural human activity can increase the diversity of the microbiota of healthy adults and contribute to the regulation of the immune system. And they say this is important because urbanization has led to an increase in immune-mediated diseases such as allergies, asthma, autoimmune diseases, etc. And at this point, it's a good time to take a quick break with today's sponsor, Seeds DS01 Daily Symbiotic. One of these little dudes has 53.6 billion active bacterial cell units from 24 different strains, which are scientifically shown to support various areas of health like gut barrier, digestive health, heart health, skin health, as well as gut immunity. Why not cover some cool immune research here as well? So let's cover this fascinating randomized control trial on the immune system, really the response to the cold virus. And they took 70 people, gave them placebo, and they took another 70 people and gave them a type of bifidobacterium. There are several of those in seed, and they did that for about a month, and then they actually gave people a rhinovirus, a strain of the common cold, which is wild. They went ahead and they drained out fluid from their nose, and the results were that the probiotic group had lower levels of viral material in their nasal lavage, and they also just had lower viral shedding. So super fascinating stuff. And I just have to mention that, yes, Lindy and I have been taking this stuff since 2021, so over 3 years now. So about 3 years now, and Lindy loves it, especially constantly touting the benefits. And so if you would like to try it, you can, of course, click the link below and use the code MIC25, MIC25, for 25% off your first month supply. All right, back to the gardens. All right, now there's so many garden research topics that we can't even cover them all here, but one that I thought was particularly interesting and could have a benefit is in the area of dementia. I recently did an Alzheimer's video with Dr. Ornish's groundbreaking vegan diet and lifestyle trial, and that's amazing. You can click that, I'll leave it at the end. But it's also the case that gardening has benefits here. But yeah, we found so many benefits for this that some people have referred to it as a dementia garden that you can use as therapy for people with various types of dementia. It keeps you involved in a ton of ways, which can be great for older people. It's kind of like doing a puzzle, but with more of your body. Anyway, we have a nice review here that looked at 16 studies. All but 2 of them found that gardening therapy and the use of therapeutic gardens induced psychophysiological improvements in people with dementia. We're talking about areas like engagement, agitation, depression/mood, stress, and medication need. And so we can hop right into the highest quality one here. This is one on Alzheimer's, randomized control trial of about 160 people. They split them up and they had a indoor garden group, so they didn't even need to be outside, as well as a placebo. No, they had them do this for 6 months, and the results were pretty wide sweeping. Not only did they have better mental state and neuropsychiatry scores, but a lower need for antipsychotic drugs, which is wild. They also had lower blood pressure and lower salivary cortisol, which is of course a stress hormone. And in response to this research, nursing home companies have drafted a plan to actually enlist dementia patients to work in agricultural fields. For example, Sundowner Care Home superintendent Bobby Works Old said that, quote, "If gardening keeps their mind sharp, it will keep our wallet full." Okay, I'm totally joking. I made that whole part up, as you could probably tell, but it's just under capitalism and, the way they use prison labor and stuff, I wouldn't even be surprised. And to the mortality data, This study found that among 65 and older people, gardening was associated with better cardiovascular disease health status, lower odds of diabetes, all these good things, and lower 10-year mortality risk. What? And then we have this study that found higher survival in people who gardened, generally by about 18%, and 35% higher survival in a subgroup of people who had mobility issues at the start and no depression, though. It's kind of a caveat subgroup. You know, is all of this reverse causation? I don't care. The negative side effect is that you get some extra vegetables. And we have another area which I think is important, and that is cancer survival and quality of life in survivors. We have this study. You know, the result was better perceived health as well as better physical performance and better vegetable consumption. Win, win, win. In particular, they did a standing chair test. And in particular, they looked at how many times people could sit up from a chair in 30 seconds. And it improved after gardening. And they also found an increase in gut diversity as well, just to tie that whole microbiome thing together. And so we have to ask, why are these benefits occurring? And I had to laugh that one of the limitations in the study was like, we don't know if this is directly caused by interacting with plants or getting some exercise by gardening. So it's like, was it caused by gardening or gardening? I've seen worse limitations in studies. But I do think there's a gardening trifecta here. We have exposure to nature as well as light exercise, and then also increased vegetable consumption, all positive things. And we have a ton of research on nature exposure. Of course, it's not full nature exposure necessarily, but from this review, we see nature exposure lowering blood pressure and even improving cognitive function. And then I think we have a strong argument for a causal relationship between light exercise and improved measures of health, as well as, you know, increased vegetable consumption, lower mortality. I mean, this is pretty obvious. But I was thinking it's funny that there aren't a ton of studies showing that harvesting/slaughtering animals improves well-being or any metrics of health. It's weird, like cutting animals open doesn't lower blood pressure. Oh no, it actually causes PTSD. So yeah, much contrast here. And I know some people might be watching this and thinking, I don't have land for or time to garden, and you know, gardening is a thing of privilege. But I have to say, it's weirdly simultaneously something that you need a little bit of privilege, but also is like what poor people rely on. Now, in certain countries at least, but I do remember living in Chicago, this is actually a problem, trying to get a community garden plot, and you have to like wait for people to die, and then they're really expensive. So I totally understand that sentiment. However, from that 2017 meta-analysis, they did address this a little bit by saying that we need to enact policies that increase urban gardening accessibility, having a land sharing strategy, and that could contribute greatly to redressing health inequalities. Now, so I don't have a great answer there other than like, if you got a window, you know, that indoor gardening study showed improvement. You know, could have a little window garden, or you could do some like hydroponic grow tower or something like that you make out of like recycled materials. Like, I believe in you. All right, garden tour time. It's nothing fancy, but here's what we got going. Herbs like the oregano and the onion. We got some cucumbers coming in here. We got some tomatoes over there, various types of basil, sunflowers coming in over here. We've got ground cherries over there, which I love. And these are kind of like cherry tomatoes are to tomatoes as ground cherries are to tomatillos, or like baby tomatillos. And then we just have a giant bed of arugula, so I've been eating a ton of arugula. And I have a nitrate video coming up, so keep your eyes peeled for that. And this looks like a weed, but it's lemongrass. Yeah. Third bed gets very little sun, so we planted it late. We're not done planting it out, so we've just got some herbs and stuff in here. Yeah, in the end, gardening just has so many benefits. I will admit that in particular areas, we could use more research to solidify them. In some cases, there's like 3 studies that show a statistically significant decrease in depression, but then one, you know, wasn't statistically significant. But the areas of benefits where we do have significance are wide, you know, especially in those areas of mental health, like lower anxiety, again, depression, even seeing lower cortisol and like increased life satisfaction and well-being. So yeah, get a garden, tend it, and also don't forget to tend to your inner garden. And of course, you can click the link below and use the code Mike25 at checkout for 25% off your first month supply of Seeds DS01 Daily Symbiotic. And of course, feel free to like, subscribe, let me down below. And as usual, let me know down below what you think about all this and gardening. I made a whole garden bed DIY video a while back. Not that many people watched it, but you know, I'll try to link it below as well. And of course, feel free to like, subscribe, and of course, let me know down below what you think other benefits of gardening that I missed are. I'm sure there are some, or if you find a study, that'd be even better. And as usual, feel free to like, subscribe, all that good stuff, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.